Welcome to Jargon, a podcast bringing clarity to commonly misunderstood business concepts. We're debunking and simplifying the buzzwords and ideas plaguing today's business world and offering a fresh perspective on these topics. Hi, this is Peter Purcell.
And Bill Imany here. We are glad you guys can join us and listen to our podcast on
the shortage of accountants. Wall Street Journal, Forbes, a variety of publications are saying that over 300,000 accountants quit their jobs over the past few years between 2019 and 2021.
That's a lot.
And that is a lot. And the articles are saying things like schools need to change their requirements or back off of their requirements a little bit to encourage people to become accountants, start the accountancy program, instead of doing 5 years, try to do it in 4, etc. But we're not sure that's the answer. Do you think, Bill?
Well, before we dive into that, part of the issue I think that companies are reporting, or Forbes and Fortune are alluding to, is that it's causing a lot of misstatements or errors or control deficiencies in companies where they don't have enough accountants to be able to, enforce the controls environment and keep things compliant. And there's a broader concern about that. And so just because accountants are leaving, the real business problem is what's going to happen in large corporations and their control environments if they can't find enough accountants.
Right. That's.
But you bring up a good point. The articles do say, hey, we need to change up the university system. Now, I would probably say we probably do need to overhaul our university system, period. But that's a whole nother podcast you and I can have.
I don't know that that's one podcast, Bill. I think that's probably a diatribe more than anything.
Yeah, I understand.
To be honest.
Yeah, it probably is. But we won't go down that path. But
exactly.
The real question is, there's this thing called AI out there we keep hearing about, Peter. And it's transforming. Yeah, you're a funny guy because you're our AI guest speaker who's speaking all over the place about AI to our clients. When we start thinking about the intersection of finance and accounting, and we think about AI, artificial intelligence, is there an opportunity there?
Yeah, and I think that in a spirit of openness and honesty for our 4 listeners now, and we did just write a article on this. So there is an article that we have out on our website to answer this, but I thought it might be better for us to actually discuss it. So, Bill, when you think of what you just said... So
everybody just dropped off and they're reading the article instead
of they're going to read the articles instead of listening to us. But, Bill, you mentioned controls. You mentioned financial misstatements or financial statement errors. There's a variety of things that a good accountant does for a company, right?
Absolutely.
And, yes, accountants do good things, just to let you know. Guys, they really, really do.
Well,
they're
they're producing the financial statements for companies so you can evaluate and decide whether you're going to invest in it or not.
Exactly. And, the controls framework, if it's done correctly, actually helps you be consistent as a company as opposed to what many folks think is business prevention. That's not the case. So, Bill, as we think through these things, why don't you go through kind of your perspective? I mean, I'm pro AI out the wazoo, right? You're a little bit more skeptical. So my question to you is, can you see AI stepping in and helping kind of alleviate some of this shortage?
Well, and AI has already stepped into the world of finance and accounting. And without getting down a rabbit trail of what products and solutions are out there, without getting into that, when you think about artificial intelligence, think about questions that you ask every day or every month or every quarter as an accountant. So one of the questions might be, or something you have to do every month or every quarter, might be producing your management discussion and analysis and analyzing financial results. So it's not a rote task. It takes some intelligence. But if you step beyond that intelligence and say, is there a way that I can use AI to help with variance analysis? Now, a lot of ERP and financial planning analysis solution providers are out there saying they have AI. They haven't really gotten there yet, but there are some AI-specific tools out there that you can layer into your business process and say, okay, let's do that exception analysis of data. So, for example, ChatGPT, you can create your own GPTs of questions that you might ask and infer from some data that you have, where you can ask the question of, say, show me anomalies in expenses in this big data set. And then you teach that GPT that you've created to actually identify what is an anomaly and what's not. The first go-round, it might come up with a series of 50 items that are anomalies, but only 25 of them are. You can reject those and say, these are anomalies and these are not, and then teach that GPT to then the next month go in and really pick out where the anomalies are in your expenses and do those audits. So what that really means is an accountant can start saving time.
Okay. So let me just define GPT for folks out there that may not know exactly what it is. It's called generative predictive text. And the way that Bill is using it is ChatGPT is a big, it's actually dumb, but it's a big smart AI machine. But you can create your own version of it called your own GPT, where it's almost like your little robot, your little assistant that sits next to you, learns your quirks, learns the way that you ask questions, learns your data set very carefully. It's a little bit like Microsoft Copilot and what Copilot is doing right now. But it's your little AI robot, right?
Yeah. So think about if you create a simple computer program or a Excel file you might create. You have if-then statements, okay? But layer intelligence into those if-then statements. So the if-then statements that you have in a financial analysis spreadsheet that says if this amount is over X dollars highlighted in red, right. That's simple kind of programming. Layer artificial intelligence into that saying if these attributes occur, and there might be a series of attributes, and you might process that against 50 different items, unstructured and structured items that give you the attributes of what is a true anomaly or what's something that needs to be investigated from an audit perspective or where's something where there's a potential risk, layering that into your programming.
Correct.
It's really what we're talking about. We talk about the GPTs, and Peter called them generative
predictive text. That's the official name.
Yeah.
But I think the audience need to understand that when you said create your own GPT, what you're really doing is creating your own little AI environment with your questions, and so it learns your data. But back to your original thing is you're doing your management reports, you're doing your financial statements and the like. You can create your own GPT to help accelerate that process and maybe eliminate one or two analysts that you would normally use.
Or just save a heck of a lot of time. So, for example, quarter end, and I'm spending, let's say, 2 weeks going through and doing my MD&A's, management discussion and analysis work. I might load a data set of my past MD&A's and say, okay, these are the 5 things that have changed. Please update our discussion points
based on this data set.
On this data set. And of course, you're still going to have to do some work, but it saves you time and effort of having to go through that manually yourself. So start thinking about those questions and things that you have to do on a monthly or quarterly basis that you can then layer in some artificial intelligence. You know, okay, so I can't hire another accountant because I can't find one, but how can I save some time as an individual in an accounting department? Or if you're the CFO and you're sitting there going, how do we address this as a company? Start thinking about how can I layer in artificial intelligence into my planning and analysis process. And even today already, Power BI has artificial intelligence. Microsoft's embedded it into Power BI to help identify variances and give you, I'll say, some analytic capabilities, which basically what that does, it gives operations that capability so they don't need the accountant telling them everything about the financials every single month. So there's efficiencies that can be gained there.
Okay. So that's kind of in reporting and kind of both internal and external. So let's go to the big F1, right? The fraud, right? In controls. How do you see, or do you see, a role for AI in helping support your controls framework, identify anomalies and the like?
Yeah, and this is where it gets a little tricky. So you start identifying, and that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier about anomalies and talking about things that are happening. So if I look at a data set and I might say, and this is a simple rudimentary example, do I see payments going out to an individual that we've never paid before? That's a simple question that you might ask. But there might be a series of those things that you might program into your GPT or your AI environment to say, okay, populate and pull out all of those in my general ledger or my payables file that has these attributes. And then, again, put some intelligence on it and say, well, it gave me 5,000 items. Well, I don't have 5,000 fraud items. And then you start teaching that GPT to say, these are true when you see these 5 things occur. And then it starts learning that these 5 things in conjunction with 2 other things occur, those are my true potential areas where I need to go and audit and investigate. There may be a layer of questions that you ask the GPT model to say, question number 1, do I see this attribute? Question number 2, do I see the next attribute? Question number 3. So I layer into the questions, and then it funnels it down to one answer. So I might layer that into my GPT along with my data set, and being able to quickly identify, here are areas where we need to investigate. Because companies spend a lot of time through that audit process. Maybe it's auditing timesheets, whatever.
Oh, but I can see GPTs easily doing those audits for you and identifying anomalies or repeatable patterns that shouldn't be there.
They're not going to do the audit for you.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I misused the word. This one is me, guys, not Bill. Bill's the smart one and the good-looking one. Yeah, I know. Allie, do not edit that out. Anyway, but the bottom line is that it's there to spot those patterns, the good and the bad.
Right. Pattern identification and put some intelligence on it. Then it becomes a repeatable process, and then you can start learning from it and adjusting the GPTs along the way. So helping you narrow down, because typically in a typical audit, you're going to do sampling.
Right.
Okay. And I might choose a different sample. And why do I do sampling? Because I don't have enough time to
do everything.
So what it does is it broadens that horizon of sampling to say, well, I don't really need to do sampling anymore. What I'm going to do is put some intelligence on top of all the data. Then I can do sampling of the smaller set of anomalies, or I'll say items that could be red flags.
Right. I mean, it just basically will help you zero in. Yeah. You have a much larger data set at the very beginning, sample at the very beginning, and then it just will allow you to zero in where you really need to.
Yeah. So then the third area, really, we talked about reporting analysis, we talked about controls. The third area, and people have been talking about this with AI and automation and robotic process automation, which was a nice term for basically replicating steps that you do every month and putting it in a program, which was nothing more than that. There's no robots there, by the way. People were looking for them, but they weren't there. Talking about how do I automate, I'll call it transaction processing environments with AI. And I think, Peter, you've been working with some of our clients on this. The combination of AI with OCR, optical character recognition. Right. And in my view, historically, OCR, when it's applied to, let's say, large engineering documents and things like that, it was very useful in taking unstructured data and putting it into structured data. But when it came to invoices that would come in, accountants were historically spending more time correcting the mistakes OCR was making than the value OCR was providing. But what OCR has done is put in some machine learning to understand the word invoice means this and this means that, and putting that intelligence into the OCR process.
Right. And even better is that, in the old days, OCR as it is today, right, without
the old
AI,
days of OCR.
The old days of OCR, like yesterday, if you came across an error, oftentimes it couldn't tell you what the error is. It just couldn't, it inhaled what it could, and that's it. But with AI OCR, what will happen is, and what we've experienced, depending on the tool, is it will actually, if it has trouble in an area, it will actually put you into a dashboard-like thing and say, okay, teach me to understand this better. So it makes you interact, so it learns from its mistakes. The old OCR never learned from its mistakes, if you will. You had to go back and recode, and recode for that particular template. But what we're finding with AI OCR is the more you use it, the more accurate it gets.
Yeah, that's a good point. That extends into not just invoices, but purchase confirmations, contracts. So as you start tying in your vendor contracts in with your OCR to say, is this invoice compliant with our contract?
Right.
And start using that embedded machine learning, OCR, AI I'm throwing a lot of terms here, but that helps you be more compliant.
Right. And I'm going to just go back to that example and beat that example to death. If you think about it, many contracts are written with service level agreements and, quality agreements, quality requirements, and the like. But those are just written documents. So when I get an invoice in today without AI, I would have to go and read that contract as an AP invoice person, or anybody that's responsible for approving that invoice may have to go back and read the entire contract to really figure out, was the contractor or was the service compliant to what we have in our contract. With AI can summarize that. You don't even have to read the contract. AI can summarize it, and in many cases with AI OCR, it can match up. Did it meet the time frame requirements? If there is a quality entry on the receiver, which is where you put your quality, is the quality, within tolerance of what we agreed to in the contract? It can actually do a lot of that work for you without you having to spend a significant amount of time reading the contract and then translating it back.
Yeah, and so you're probably listening right now. You're going, wow, that's a lot of stuff we can do.
Yeah.
And so there's a strategic layer of all this when you start thinking about the finance organization and adopting AI and having a good AI strategy. That's, probably, it's not going to happen overnight. Companies aren't going to move all of a sudden tomorrow and become leaner, faster. There needs to be, I'll call it a strategic plan for transforming finance with AI. You just don't go and do it. And it starts with, why are you doing it? What are the guiding principles behind it? And then what issues do you really want to address, and prioritizing? Because you start thinking about all this stuff, it could be daunting, right?
Oh, absolutely. But when you say you need to step back and think about this strategically, then kind of create a series, the next step, right, is what's the roadmap for implementation? And I'm always thinking about what does that roadmap look like from a time and effort perspective? And I'm going to tie it back to an opening comment that we made. You could probably, as a company, start implementing some of this stuff a lot faster than waiting for the next class of accountants to go through and, for you to hire. You could probably do this a little bit faster than this 10-year cycle of us rethinking how we teach accountants, how do we produce accountants, and then getting accountants through that, 4 or 5 year program, if you will.
Yeah, this is more of a next couple of years thing, not a 10-year. I mean, that's like...
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
is by going down this path, you might be able to plug the hole of your shortage a lot faster than if you wait to hire a bunch of people coming out of school.
Well, and along those lines, if you're sitting there as a listener and you're an accountant and you're going, well, you know what, I don't have the authority to drive a huge transformation effort or start looking at this, what I would encourage you to do is play with it. Play with Copilot, play with GPT, OpenAI. There's free versions out there, but be careful putting your data out there. But like Copilot, you can actually go in, and what I encourage you to do is pick a big document that you have to go through, a contract or something. And in your Copilot environment, look at your own internal files and keep them secure and everything. And just do hey, give me the key points that relate to pricing in that contract. Just ask a question. And just see what it can do. And that'll start stimulating ideas in your mind of, okay, what can we do with this? What can we do from all of our SEC reports that we produce? Is there a way to summarize some key points from that? Are there ways that we can start looking at some of our own data and information in one of our Excel files and taking a look at that? Just play with it. And if you don't want to, if you're hesitant and you don't want to play with your own information, go out there and find a contract some government entities produced and just ask a question.
Ask questions about it.
And save it in your files and start seeing the power of what you can do with it. For example, what I did was I was kind of untrusting about this. So I took our homeowners association, big, huge 50-page bylaws, and I asked the question to summarize anything related to construction approval. It summarized all the key points of what I needed to do.
Without you having to read the whole
darn thing.
Document. And
it told me exactly, I need to get approval for this and not for that for architecture control. That was just one example, but I encourage people to start playing with that if you haven't, and thinking about how can that apply to your job, and then using that as an example to show your management, show the leadership team, especially some of the younger accountants out there who are trying to figure out how they can leverage this. This is a great career booster for you, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Because like Peter's point, I don't have to wait for the next round of hires to come in. I don't have to wait for the universities to figure out how to produce more accountants. You guys are already there. Make it happen.
Make it happen. So on that note, thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, you can email Bill at bill@trinergy.com.
Or you can email Peter at trinergy.com.
Either way.
Or you can just go to our website and click Contact Us, and we're glad to chat with you. We can come out to your organization and give you guys some tips and pointers on how to be looking at AI in the future.
Or you can download our handbook. We have a handbook for how to implement AI, in your company. So if you have any questions along those lines, you know how to get a hold of us.